Right now, for some advice, though, for travelers during this holiday rush, we're joined live by Gabor Lukacs, the president of Air Passenger Rights. Gabor, thanks for joining us this afternoon. It seems to me, we've heard of these cancellations of Air Canada and WestJet flights, some thousand because of the situation weather-wise around here. What do you make of this sort of preemptive move to cancel the flights at this point? Is this okay by you? Because I know this is something you're so focused on.
Good afternoon. When we expect the weather to disrupt travel to a particular region, locally, in this case Toronto, it's perfectly reasonable based on scientific data to cancel some flights. What is more troubling is when the airlines try to claim that flights, say in Toronto or Calgary, are canceled on Tuesday or Wednesday because of what's happening in Vancouver. So airlines should not be permitted to get away with blaming everything on weather happening thousands of kilometers away. But what we see now and what we hear from every expert is that, yes, there will be a severe weather condition tomorrow. So it's much better to keep people home, not make people risk having to come to the airport, and ensuring that they are rebooked on the next available flight or are offered a refund as they choose.
Okay, so Gabor, it sounds like you're saying in this situation, the airlines are not trying to be sneaky. There is, in fact, a real weather warning, and what they're doing is completely legitimate. So when should passengers say, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right, I need to fight for this?
In the case of Toronto, flights to and from Toronto, we do have a warning, a weather warning. So that makes probably a lot of sense. I would still suggest looking into aviation, whether if you're really suspicious. The real cases that are red flag to me is what happened earlier this week when flights canceled from Winnipeg, from Toronto, from more central or eastern Canada that have nothing to do with BC were somehow blamed on the Vancouver situation. That would be very suspicious.
So what is the best advice you could give to passengers right now who may be dealing with either a canceled, postponed, or sort of delayed flight at this point, Gabor? What kind of tips would you give them to kind of help them deal with whatever airline they're dealing with?
Be informed. Make sure that you keep tabs on the airline's schedules. Take screenshots, document your interaction with the airlines. If you have difficulty reaching them on the phone, have a recording of you attempting to reach them and getting a message that their call center is fully dysfunctional. And ultimately, take initiative. The airlines, even in the case of the weather, do have some basic obligations. They have to inform you, they have to give you updates, and they have to offer you a refund in the original form of payment, or if you want to travel, they have to offer you alternate transportation. So if they don't do that, then maybe you want to get a ticket on another airline that does operate, and later on make the original airline pay for it.
And Gabor, we heard some horror stories out of Vancouver International Airport about people having to sleep on the floor, or, the baggage carriers just kind of in limbo, not knowing what to do next. And the airline said, we're not going to provide any meal or hotel voucher because this is due to the weather. So in that case, as a passenger, is anyone responsible for you having to suffer?
Unfortunately, if the flight is canceled due to weather, the airline doesn't owe you meals or accommodation. However, if the flight was known to be canceled earlier and they failed to notify you, even though there is a legal obligation to notify you under the law, then damages caused by their failure to notify you in a timely manner would be compensable. Also, if you are stuck on the tarmac on the aircraft, the airline has to let you off after 3 hours or 3 hours and 45 minutes if departure is imminent. In any event, they have to provide you with food and fluids in reasonable quantities. If they keep you on the tarmac for longer than 4 hours, I recommend passengers to call 911 because it's a form of forcible confinement. You have a right to use that plane.
I've never heard that before, Gabor. That's interesting. And just before we let you go, the Passenger Bill of Rights has sort of come into effect this year. How would you say it is going at this point? What kind of a grade would you give it as we head into 2023?
The so-called air passenger protection regulations have been in effect for 3 years now. It's not coming into effect this year. It has been a failure because it was written by the airlines for the airlines in a manner that is so complicated that for deciding the fate of $400, sometimes you need 1,000 pages of documents. Just earlier this week, we submitted a 29-page report to the House of Commons Transport Committee about how Canada's air passenger protection regime should be revamped, and essentially we urge harmonization with the European Union's gold standard, which is simple, straightforward, clear, and it is very simple to decide whether compensation is or isn't owed.
All right, Gabor Lukacs, president of Air Passenger Rights. I certainly learned a lot. Appreciate your time. Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Thank you very much for having me. Happy holidays.